The time has come once again to speak as witches and wizards do, and may I add dragons because there's two dragons heading this particular episode. So I'm Daniel Dubois,
I'm Michaela Stone.
and we're your hosts for the Think Like a Wizard podcast. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 8, Power. And since I told you about this episode, especially today, all that's been going through my head is like, power, power, power.
Power Rangers go.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
What was I going to say? So I guess we should probably start off with defining the difference between hard power and soft power. So hard power, basically the use of force, and soft power, the use of persuasion or
Okay.
coercion and co-opting, I think is the definition politically.
Okay.
But this is going to be relevant to the episode because there's a lot of power out there, but a lot of it is soft power. And people sometimes underestimate just how important and just how powerful soft power is versus actually hard power. Yes, there's nothing that you want more than hard power when you're pinned on the ground and you can't escape by whoever's got you. But even then, soft power can still get you out of it if you know how to use it properly.
Are you talking spiritually or in
All aspects.
physical?
All aspects.
Okay. So the thing that leaps to mind for me is, as you know, I use behavior analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things with behavior analysis, I would call it a soft power because you can manipulate somebody else's behavior.
Yes.
Using behavior analysis. Now, the idea is that you do so in an ethical and helpful manner. However, as we all know, once you have power of any kind, it's very much up to how that person is made, shall we say, or what their criteria are and how they persuade themselves to use the power. Because we can persuade ourselves of anything.
Yes.
If we want to, right? Like it's just that's another power. In fact, it's our power of self-persuasion.
Yes. And we should, I think we've discussed this on the podcast before, but I know I've discussed this a tons of times, but so the expression, right? Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That's not true. Power reveals. Power reveals who you are.
I like that a lot better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I thought about it, right? What inherently makes a good person become bad just because they have power? And you could argue and say, well, now they can do things. But if what they want to do is good, then how do they become corrupted by power, right? It's what you see is powerless people being given power and them not knowing how to handle it is usually where you see what looks like corruption.
And sometimes it can be, it shows your values as well, right?
Yes.
And how solidly you hold those values. A lot of us are sort of given values by your family, by society, whatever, and you kind of wear them like a necklace.
Yes.
But it's not soul deep. It's not something that you actually mean. So if the person listening to this, people listening to this, want to figure out where their values are, it's not what you tell yourself. It's where do you spend your time, your energy, and your money? Where do you put your focus? That is your value. Those are the things that you value. So, for example, if you say, I value family, but then you don't hang around with any and you don't talk to them, well, do you really? No, you're just trotting out something that people tell you is the appropriate thing to say. So, power of persuasion can lead to all kinds of difficulties, shall we say. And would you call that a soft power? Maybe a soft power with a hard outcome?
Yes. Well, that's actually a very important one because you've probably noticed throughout your life that, you know, people who have quote unquote hard power capable of using force often don't. In fact, we are often very much dissuaded from using force, even a lot of times just internally in our own, either because of our values or because it'll ostracize us from society because won't want to associate with us because we're using force. So often, soft power then becomes the thing that fills the vacuum and gives the people without hard power, well, a lot of power.
Okay. Yeah, I can go with that. It's also a case of knowing what would you do in that
Mm-hmm.
circumstance. And we tell ourselves stories, right?
Yeah.
If that was me, I would have done this, this, this. But would you? You know, an example of revealing that
Mm-hmm.
actually came from my son, one of my kids. He was
Oh, yeah.
teaching about the Holocaust.
Right.
And one of the questions he asked his grade 11 students was, would you have helped? Would you have been one of those people who would have, hidden Jews? Would you have helped save them? And, most people, all bar one, said
Right.
yes. Okay, would you have done that if it was risky for yourself? People started to waver. And then
Mm-hmm.
he said, would you have helped if doing so meant that your life was at risk and so was your family's? If there could be repercussions that were, potentially
Right.
fatal, would you have helped then? And everybody fled to the no, I wouldn't side. So this is understandable, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like on the surface you think,
Right.
yes, I would behave this way, but when you're given the different circumstances, how you would show up changes. And power is one such circumstance where, okay, right now you can talk an awful lot of philanthropy and amazing things, right?
Right.
And that's really cool, but would you? If you actually had the money, for example, or if you were in a position of authority, how would you use it? When it comes to things like witchcraft, for example,
Mm-hmm.
it's funny. I was just saying yesterday, I try really hard. Don't judge me for this,
Mm-hmm.
but I was saying, I try really hard not to hex people, even when they annoy the hell out of me. Like
Right.
I really try to not do that because I don't want the repercussions
Right.
and because I'm afraid of how powerful that might be.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's my responsibility, right?
Yeah.
So I have a healthy fear. I believe it's a healthy fear of the power that could be opened up, and I
Yes.
don't want to do it. Sometimes people kind of push me to the edge, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But so far I'm holding true and haven't gone there. But I can see how it's easy to cross that line.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why this kind of ties into everything we've been talking about because it is about knowing yourself and power will help you reveal yourself. So if you ever want to know how you are when you have power, actually just look at what you do with your power now.
Right.
Like, if you ever want to know what you would do with power and you're a parent, you have your answer.
Oh yes. And actually being a parent gives you all kinds of answers because you can
Hmm.
also answer the questions about how secure are you in who
Right.
you are, how secure are you in what you know,
Yep.
and are you as patient as you'd like to think you are? Because you know, there are some things that are going to push your buttons. How do you respond with that? And do you remember that this little person that you're in charge of is fully, wholly reliant on you?
Yeah.
So you got to wield that power very carefully. There's an African proverb that power is like an egg. If you hold it too tightly, you'll
Hmm.
crush it and lose it. If you hold it too loosely, you'll drop it and also lose it.
Right.
So you have to hold power just right.
Yeah. It's funny because I like using parents as an example for most of the things I do because it's the one thing you do in life where you're held to the truth of who you are,
Yep.
regardless of what happens.
Yeah. And you might want to forget some things, and you might want to pretend you didn't, and you might want to come up with excuses for whatever. But deep down, if you're true to yourself, you have got to know that sometimes you screwed up.
Hmm.
And how do you handle that as a parent? Because that's how you handle pretty much everything. And parenting is like one of the ultimate tests of everything about you, because you're sleep deprived, you've got this sort of overwhelming input of noise and of pulling on your emotional strings and all
Hmm.
of the things. Like on the physical plane, that has to be the number one challenge that anybody ever faces. And every day you get to face it again. And even when your kids are grown, guess what? Didn't go away because they're
Nope.
still your kids. So and you still, then they start to say, when I was 4 years old, you
Mhm.
said this, or you did that, or you didn't say this, or you didn't say that. And then you have to figure out, well, how am I going to respond to this?
Mhm.
Because I honestly believe, perhaps naively, but I hold it anyway,
Right.
that nobody wakes up and thinks, I'm going to make some really shitty decisions today. Like, I am just going to totally be a bad person. I don't know that anybody does that. We all tell ourselves that there's a good purpose behind what we're doing. And we try, right? There are some parental exceptions, yes, I
Mhm.
know. And if you suffered with that, then I'm sorry that was a thing for you. And yeah, sucks. But for the most part, and even then, those people did not have much in their repertoire to choose from. They showed up how it was in them to show up.
Yeah. It's weird, but this leads me to the idea. So I'm going to start with this expression, then I'm going to flip it.
Okay.
So, to whom much is given, much is expected. But the thing with that saying is if you flip it, to whom much is expected, much is given. To me, in my head, it makes me immediately think of people who don't know how to give power to people. Like I've had jobs where I've been in charge of things, but I wasn't given the full authority to do what I need to do. I'm like,
Okay.
you're giving me the responsibility of doing this thing, but you're not giving me the authority to do the thing you want me to do because you want to keep control. But I'm like, I can't do the job you want me to do because you didn't give me the power to do it.
And that is the case of the person holding on too tightly
Right.
because they fear to lose control. They cannot hand it to you because then they're left with a gap.
Yeah.
The person who micromanages, for example, they're scared to death. They have no idea what they're doing.
Mhm.
They know they don't, but they don't want you to know. So they micromanage the blue blazes out of you. And what do you get other than yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am?
Mhm.
Because they're pulling your attention that way. It's a bit like a kid having a tantrum. You have to pay attention to it, and they're distracting from something else. So it's a sign of being promoted above your level when you can't give up the power. And you can view that in a job, you can view that in
Right.
life. Like if you are out of your depth, then you are going to hang on to that every last ounce of power. And
Mhm.
you may even be misusing it at that point to make sure that nobody else comes close, right? Nobody else tries to get it from you. Think of a dictator and the point that eventually every society gets to of, okay, there's a dictator in charge, now we're going to have a revolution and we're going to seize the power because they
Right.
won't give it up. And the only way to bring back balance is to go in there and match force with force and take it back again.
Yeah.
This is how human behavior goes. So, but the person holding on to the power is doing so because they don't know how to let go, and they're afraid of the consequences if they do.
Yeah. It's funny, right? Because for a properly functioning, we'll say society, you need to recognize when you have power, when you have to give up that power, when you have to share the power, and when you have to allow completely submission to a power.
Mhm.
And that'll
And,
happen
and
multiple
also
times, even throughout a day.
and also when sometimes the power just isn't, it's not helpful for you to have it,
Hmm.
either for yourself or for other people. And those are the times when you really do need to say, you know what, I'm passing the torch, here you go. And it doesn't mean anything bad about you, but we don't have that ability. We don't have that art taught to us in society. And the problem is, I think so few people know how to do it, that who is there to teach it? Hence, maybe
Yeah.
some dragon power gets to come in here and make things happen. Because something I want to mention when you talk about power
Hmm.
is there is immense power in destruction. And
Yes.
when destruction happens, then you can get creation. I
Yes.
have I have a statue of Shiva on my high up on my wall, so I can't
Right.
get to it. But it came from the village in India where Shiva was said to have created the universe, which is a
Okay.
place called Chola. I got it from there, so I don't know. I just felt the need to say that.
Yeah.
But Shiva is always depicted as 1 foot up, dancing, right? And one
Right.
foot is up. And it is said that when that foot is put down, the world is destroyed.
Mm.
Shiva created the world, Shiva can destroy the world.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's a dance, it's a recurrence, it's a pattern that if you think of a forest fire, it is natural to have forest fires so that new growth can occur.
Right.
The phoenix rises
Hmm.
from the ashes. The phoenix has to burn first in order to
Yeah.
rise. So where does that fit in daily lives? Where does that fit in your practice? And I'm going to say, from a Jungian perspective, right,
Hmm.
leaping into psychology now,
Right.
the ego needs to go through ego death in order to let the new you come forward. So, in other words, you have to let go of the perceptions you have about yourself, your identity, who you think you are, and explore who you can be, who you want to be, and who you
Yes.
really are. So you have to let go of the one or it dies in order to get to the other. So we
Yep.
went from magic to politics to psychology,
Mhm.
and they're all saying the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna see. So this episode is meant to be, well, I said to you before, right? If it doesn't come across as controversial, we're not doing it right. This episode. Um, and I kind of want to touch on something because this will be controversial in the spiritual, magical sense. So lately, so Michaela's been my, we'll call her my magic dealer, my spell dealer. I haven't cast spells in years because I don't usually do them, but Michaela's already made me do a couple. And one of the things she made me, or she directed at me, was to burn a candle for a dragon, and I did, and that kind of cemented not a contract, but a sort of our working relationship, if you will. And so, one of the things we're going to do in our work is create a new magic system. Now, I've already got one that I created that I was already guided to create, which is basically how to use your energy, use elements, the alchemical elements as a metaphor. So I'm like, what else do I have to do? And then, and this was a whole big discussion of my reaction was, what's the point? Like I've already said before in this podcast, right? I don't cast spells. Spirits want to do something. I say, sure, here's the energy, do what you need to do. So I'm like, why do I need magic? Why do I need spells? And yet, that's the direction I'm going in. Spells are now going to be in my repertoire going in 2025. Because
I'm rather
just for the
excited
listeners,
about that.
2024 right now, this is the last episode recording this year. Just so you know, because the way I said it, was kind of making an anachronistic kind of idea when it's posted. But so now I'm moving forward into spells, and my reaction right now, and I'm stuck on this thing of who cares? Why do I need to do spells?
Because the spells channel,
Yes.
they direct, they funnel your intention,
Mm-hmm.
they there's a purpose to them. It's not just a carte blanche, do whatever.
Right.
It's specifically, okay, I want to work over here. All right,
Mm-hmm.
I want to affect this thing. And it involves responsibility,
Yes.
culpability, right? You can't just say, well, the spirits wanted to do this thing, and
Yeah.
so this thing happened. It's like, yeah, no, you're actually an active participant at this
Right.
point where you have a yes or a no that you can say, and you have an active participation to offer
Mm-hmm.
that can magnify or diffuse depending on what you're working on, right? So there is power in that,
Yes.
and using it consciously, intentionally, and on what purpose will you use it for, depending on the day, right?
Yeah.
And each time you use it, you have to consider, or ideally, you consider, why am I doing this? What is my motivation as well as my
Mm-hmm.
intention? Like, is it this is great for me and screw everybody else? Or is this is great for everybody else and screw me? Like neither of those are in balance. So what is it? What is the point? Is a good
Mm-hmm.
question. That's literally the question. What is the point? Is
Yeah.
it for everybody? Is it something that's part of a bigger program? Are you joining with others? Is it a solo practice? Does it vary? There's so many questions that come up when you make that decision, and you
Mm-hmm.
have the responsibility for each answer you give. It's a big
Yeah.
move. I'm excited. It's a
Yeah.
big move.
It is. I want to point out something for the listeners. So you'll notice how nonchalantly me and Michaela kind of reacted to my saying so what. I guess Michaela had some things to say, but think about this. You're just starting this journey, and someone just told you, hey, a relatively powerful dragon has just offered to do magic with you, and you're like, so what? Think about that from a beginner's perspective.
Mhm.
It's like, hold on, this guy just said so what to a dragon when the
Well,
dragon offers power?
again, what was the question? Like, what was the point to the question? And I kind of like the idea of knowing what.
Mhm.
So you could take so what as being, well, that was rude.
Yeah.
Or you could take it as being, well, that's a good question.
Well, that's the thing, right? My whole thing is because, like, through my work that I've done invisibly in the shadows, as I say, it's just basically just been me being at the right place at the right time, the spirits doing what they need to do, me giving up the energy necessary to do the task. And that's been how it works. And it's like, why do I need to cast a spell when I'm already the focus point and the giver of energy for an event to happen? My understanding, in all honesty, since asking that question, is that now there's stuff to do that's not enough.
Mhm.
Now there's bigger things, and this needs to go into the more the official magic kind of way of doing things. But I just find it funny because when I think about saying like you just told Dragon so what about having power that they're gonna help you with, and it's like
Yeah, and so much of it is what are you making it mean? Right? That's one of my favorite questions is, well, what because when you ask somebody, well, what are you making that mean?
mm-hmm.
There's going to be a response, right? Often it's, I'm not making it mean anything. It means
Right.
this thing. Well, they just answered my question, because whatever you think about an event or a situation is, in fact, what you're making it mean.
Yeah.
Events are neutral until you assign a meaning to them.
Mm-hmm.
They literally are. So if everybody in the world can look at one event
Mm-hmm.
and describe it in the same way, like if they were looking at Danielle and I right now,
Mm-hmm.
they could say, well, he's wearing black and she's wearing
Yeah.
white, which I think is kind of funny for this
Yeah.
for this podcast and
It
totally
is.
not planned. Everybody would agree with that, right? Like, yep, that's black and white. Absolutely. Even if you're colorblind, you can see it's black and white.
Yeah.
So, but what does that mean? Well, this is the part where you make it mean something if you choose to. It could mean that this was symbolic of how the podcast is going to be today, that we're very black and white about things, or it
Right.
could mean that that's exactly what we're not going to do, and we're not going to be black and white. We're going to prevaricate and
Right.
make it into gray. Like, you can go anywhere you want to go with that. That is where you make it mean something. And even though we tell ourselves, no, I don't do that, it's interesting. Why would that be a problem? Why would that be a
Yeah.
bad thing? Of course, you make things mean something.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where, when you're doing magic, okay, so what are you making it mean? What are
Mm-hmm.
you doing this for? And are you relying on the magic to replace something that you're missing? And what came to my mind at that point is sometimes somebody will get, I think you've mentioned this before, where somebody will get into using a pendulum or they'll
Hmm.
be using the cards and it's almost compulsive. They can't make a decision without getting the pendulum.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that's not how it works. That's not what it's for. It's a misuse and it's an inaccurate use. So you're not going to
Yes.
get very good answers. So, so what? What does it mean? What are you doing with it? Why? These
Actually,
are
yeah, I
good
think we talked
questions.
about it last
Beginner
episode.
needs to ask yourself
Mhm.
this. Beginning person, are you following a magical path because it calls to you? Because you know that it's your place to go? Like, are you drawn? Or is it something that you're curious about? Or is it just, hey, that's fun. Let me see what I can do. Or, I want to make some love spells or something like that. What level are you at?
Yeah. It's because part of this episode, or part of it, a big chunk, right, is people's relationship to power. It's kind of what this episode should bring out in the listeners is their relationship to power. And things I never thought about having power before, because, we're just again with my question of so what? It's like the is this a power I need? That as a kid I would have said, give me all the power you can give me. But as an adult or where I am now in my practice, it's the do I need this power and why do I need this power? You know, all power comes with responsibility, which is one of the things we do want to touch on this one. So the
It's
more
very, very important.
so if you want to be responsible, like, the classic, I think, example of most people you can take for exaggerated power is Superman. And depending which incarnation of Superman you're looking at, that's a ridiculous amount of power. Like we're talking like planet wreck destroying, we're talking like even solar system destroying. What are you going to do with that kind of power? Like stopping muggers? Like that's way overkill for stopping muggers, right?
Right. And
So
so
that's
really honesty is going to be honesty and integrity are two huge features that you need to hone. You need to practice with them. You
mm-hmm.
need to tap into them. Like if you want to make the best choices available to you, then you need to come from that place. Because if you're not clear on your motivation, you're going to end up with some very muddy intention, and that doesn't go well. And there is no get out of consequences free card.
Right.
It doesn't exist. And in the spiritual realms, consequences are far reaching. It can be generational.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very big deal. And if you could try and ignore it if you like, but then chances are you're not listening to this podcast.
Right.
However,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what you think of it. It's there anyway.
Yeah.
It's like you can believe the truth or not. It doesn't alter the truth.
Yeah. It's funny. It makes me think of, I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson that said the good thing about science is you don't have to believe in it. Magic works the same way. You don't have to believe in it. The effects still happen whether you believe in it or not. And what I was going to add to what you were saying, like, so what are you going to do with the power you have? But that's like, by saying, I don't want power so I can get rid of that responsibility, you have another responsibility. Who are you letting have your power? Because you still have a certain amount of power. And if you choose not to use it because you don't want the responsibility, you then take on the responsibility of who do you give your power to?
And not choosing
Mm-hmm.
or choosing to shirk a responsibility is unquestionably a choice. And so there's still consequences. There is no get out of consequences free card. So whether you do or whether you don't, if you like, you are damned. Like you're certainly damned to your consequences. You are going to get the results of that action or intentional non-action.
Mm-hmm.
So choose that one really wisely, because if it's a place of cowardice that you're coming from, that no, I don't want to do this, I don't want to risk it, well, then this is a blockage that you're putting in place, and that itself has consequences. So, who are you letting take it? Yes. And what are you not doing that you're supposed to be doing, that you're here to do? Because
Right.
if you don't do it this time, you are coming back, my friend. That's
Mhm.
you keep doing, you keep getting those experiences until you do the thing you came for. So might as well go running toward it rather than away from
Mm.
it.
Yeah. But, you know, I can see why this would start to get controversial. So you've chosen to run from the things you've decided to do in this lifetime. Well, guess what? While you're doing that, you're also screwing out everyone else who you're supposed to work with, who also needs you to finish their work.
That's true. Yeah. My
Yeah.
understanding of how we plan out what we're doing before we get here into
Mm,
the physical realm and so on is you have certain things that you need to learn and that you need to do. And you also have deals with people, if you will.
yes.
So someone needs a certain life experience, and your soul, can say,
Mm,
okay, I'll do that. I'll take that on and I'll show
mm,
up and I'll help you with that lesson, which means that sometimes you're not going to be a very good person. You're because you have to not be in order to give that person that life experience. But you agreed this in a place where the judgment of being in the physical plane wasn't a thing. It was just literally a case of, well, this is my laundry list, if you will, of
mm,
things that I want to go through this trip, and I need help with these things.
mm,
And somebody in your group, in your soul group, is going to say, "Okay, I'll help. I'll be over there. Yep, yep, yep." Well, if you get here and you forget, which we typically do. Ask little
mm,
kids, though, they know a lot more. But as we get older, we forget. And if you are then running away from something that you agreed to do, well, that, my friend, is
mm,
problematic because it's you're breaking your contract with the other person and you're not taking part the way you said you would. There
mm,
is no get out of consequences free card. Something will come back to you. May not be very pleasant the next time round. So now you can
yeah.
believe that. You can ignore it. I really don't care. It doesn't matter because if I'm right, then it is what it is. If I'm wrong, okay,
Mm,
come up with something more plausible. I'll listen.
yeah. I, it kind of makes me think of because I'm thinking like, some of the listeners, because they're just new to this kind of thing, are probably like, oh my God, that's way too intense. It's too much pressure. I'll put it like this. All right. So I played hockey at some point, in my life. So think about it this way. You've agreed to go play hockey or any game for that matter, but you have a role in that. Like, let's say you're playing defense. Well, if you decide while you're playing the game that, I don't want to play defense anymore, well, that's one person, less to defend the goal, to help the goalie out when the opposing team comes. So even if you don't want to think about it, oh my God, there's consequences and you don't have to map everything out. You just have to play your role.
Mhm.
That's why it's important to be who you are. Be who you are, and you will play your role, and you will be in the places you need to be, and you will do the things you need to do. Because it would be too much to to have to think about, and process and say, okay, well, so and so needs me to go be abusive over there, but then so and so needs me to go over there and be the best caretaker they've ever had, and so over there needs me to be, a semi-competent singer, and so needs me to be, a terrible, seamstress or tailor or whatever. These are all things that could be required of you as part of your contract in life. But instead of trying to pick out those individual little tasks, just stick to who you are. And who you are will put you in the place you need to be to do the things you need for other people and for yourself.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's you don't have to plan anything. It's already done. It literally is planned already. What is variable is how you handle it when it shows up. But and a lot of that will come from what you've experienced so far in this life and what you've made that mean, what you have taken and what you've done with it. So, trauma, for example, trauma is not an event. It's what you've done with the event.
Yes.
And three different people can go through the exact same experience and come out of it very differently depending on previous experiences, its nature, its nurture, it's a whole lot of information. Given what you know and given what you've experienced so far, this event will be made to mean something different from your neighbor's view of it. That's just how it is. That's how we are. So you will be in the right place at the right time,
Mhm.
and you don't need to worry about whether you'll do the right thing or not, because if you're doing things according to who you are, then you have to assume that that was correct because there's no way of knowing differently. And one of the obstacles that we throw in our own way the whole
Mhm.
time as human beings is this notion, this very limiting notion of perfectionism. So, anybody listening who suffers from that and is kind of just sitting up a little straighter and saying,
Yeah.
huh, what, me?
Yeah.
Um, there is no such thing as perfection. It doesn't exist and it's not going to exist. You can't make it happen. So hanging on to that false image stops you from taking action. It keeps you out of the stream of flow that you need to be in. So if you can kind of take it, shape it into a brick, and then put it down somewhere and just leave it, or even throw it away, just don't carry it because it's getting in your way.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
I
fair.
don't know, that just came up. It needed to be said.
Yes.
So there it
There's
was.
there's a number of things because even me, kind of one of the things to add is that on top of everything we said about how to be in the right place to do the things you need to do, I'm going to be honest with you. There's people like take this podcast, right? So me and Michaela and people like us. We're also here to remind you, hey, turn around, go that way. That's where you need to be. If you're
Hmm.
absolutely lost, that's what you have, witches, wizards, oracles, seers, whatever you want to call them. There's that extra layer of when you're stuck, there's actually a group of people whose job it is to actually kind of help you get back on track.
Well, there's always helpers.
Yeah. And yeah. And it may not be like someone may not be a wizard, someone may not be a witch. It could be someone's whole job might just be to be your friend and they happen to be connected enough that they get the messages for you. Like, just so you know, you're not abandoned, even if you don't know what to do it yourself, even if you are being yourself. There are still things in the world to help guide you.
Being open to receive, I think, is
Yeah.
essential. And without the preconceived ideas of where it's coming from and in what form, right? Because there are jokes told about that. There's one that I can think of where I'm probably going to butcher it, so yeah, forgive me on that one. But there's a guy who's on his roof and the flood water,
Oh, yeah.
and he's praying for help, right?
Mhm.
And the boat comes and then the helicopter comes and turns away all these things because the help isn't coming in the form he expected it to come
Right.
in. So he ends up drowning. He ends up talking to God and saying, well, why didn't you come and save me? Dude, I sent you a boat, a canoe,
Yeah.
helicopter.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
sent a car, boat, a
yeah,
helicopter.
that
Yeah.
joke. So, but is it a joke really? I think it's a pretty good illustration of how we get so fixated on what something has to look like and what the outcome has to be that we miss the point. And that's if that's you, then what a wonderful opportunity to just sort of
Mm.
say, wait a minute, okay, what else could it be? This is a question I use so many times because it reminds me to be curious. And
Mm.
it reminds me to consider that there are more options than the one that I'm looking at. The
Right.
one or the two that I
Hmm.
see in front of me. There's millions, there's tons. What else? What else is possible? What else can you see? It's a great question because there's so much there. And you have so many paths. As a witch, you
Hmm.
might think you know which way you want to go. Haha, which way? Anyway, you might
Yeah.
think you want to know your direction and you might think you've got that down and oh yeah, I love tarot and I'm going to do, all my things with candles. Okay, cool.
Mm.
But what else is possible? You could be missing another direction that could be included or be even better than. You won't know if you don't look. So openness to things looking differently to how you think they're going to look is key.
Yeah.
Absolutely key.
Well, and that's it. The big one is your perception of how something should be.
Mhm.
Because it's also part of my question of so what? Is part of me is the why do I even need to do this? Like, why does this even need to be a thing? When my understanding has always been, I'll just give you the energy you need to do what you need to do. And if you need me to intervene physically, I'll intervene physically. But otherwise, here's the energy, do your thing. You have my permission. So why would I need to cast spells in the first place? But like I said, right, there's a more formal layer to existence that needs those formal behaviors.
And, a question that came to mind was you're saying, why do I need to do this? Why
Mm-hmm.
do why is this important?
Mm-hmm.
Well, why do you need to know why? It's a
Well, that's
good
part of the
question.
thing, right? Like when you're here, like basically your senses are blunted by your VR suit, as I
Yep.
like to call it, right? So you don't have the full impressions you need to make those decisions in the first place. That's part of it. And it's one of those things like that's where you kind of have to learn to give up power to a certain degree because to be the agent of change, as someone incarnated in this world, you have to understand that you also have to take advice from those not incarnated in this world because they have
Yes,
an
and
vantage
be
point
open
that you
to
don't
it.
have.
Be open to it, and it's
Yeah,
not going to necessarily look the way you
right.
need it to look. But sometimes, for example, you'll meet a person and there's just it's like a compulsion almost.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have to talk to that person. I really need to go hang out with them. It could be virtually and it can be in
Mm-hmm.
person. But when you feel that, go find out why. Like, what is that about? Some of the most incredible people I've met in my life have happened that way, where I've just kind of come across them and they'll say a sentence or even a word and it'll grab my attention. And I'm like, okay, let me focus on this person. Why do I need to focus on this person? Let me go find out. I mean, I could have easily missed your comment, for example, when you said you were looking for somebody for the podcast and you didn't know
Mm-hmm.
who you were looking for.
Right.
And I was kind of zooming past that. And then I was like, whoa, wait, hold up. I'm being called back here. And I
Yeah.
went back to find out, all right, what is this? And there was never a question. It was just, oh, okay, found you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
here we go. This is what we're here for. There's a friend of mine who works with Akashic Records.
Mm-hmm.
She is outstanding with what she does. Like, just she's so connected. It's
Right.
wild. And I heard her talking to another person, she wasn't even talking to me, about something completely different. And just, I heard one or two sentences and I was like, I need to talk to her. I
Yeah.
need to know her. And we've been talking at least once or twice a week for the last couple of years now. And we've uncovered so much and worked through so much. Absolutely, there was just a draw that it was like, okay, I came
Mm-hmm.
to find you. And this place I was at, it was like it was a one-off thing. It was always there available for me, and I wasn't going for it. I wasn't availing myself. I was ignoring it. And then this one time, I thought, ah, let me see. And I went in, and there she was. So I was like, okay, this is somebody I needed to add to my circle. And I needed to be in her circle.
Right.
And, I could have ignored it, but the pull was awfully strong. So if you're ignoring something that's really calling,
Mm.
you could be missing something important
True.
or someone
Yeah.
important. And that looks many different ways, right? That really does. Sometimes you just need to hear one piece of wisdom from that person and it will alter your life trajectory.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just that. Or maybe you have something for them and you don't even know what it is. You're going to say
Mm.
it and they are going to pick it up. And you still don't know what you said, but it meant something to them, that it was a key that fitted into a place they needed it. So those interactions, like you can't plan them, you can't know them ahead of time. You just got to be open to going with it.
Mm-hmm. just kind of basically to relay, right? You have all kinds of power that you don't realize you have until the moment comes for you to exercise that power. So again, why we're doing an episode on power, because there is frankly so much power out there that individuals have that they don't realize. And a lot of people are just giving it away, not realizing it.
100%. They don't recognize that that thing is, in fact, power. I mean, your attention is power,
Mhm.
and your attention feeds power. So be careful where you put it. Your intention is power, and it feeds power. So you've got to be careful where you put it. We have so much power as individuals, and people typically, because you're taught when you're pretty young,
Mhm.
oh, don't put yourself forward, and who are you to say that? And you don't know anything, you're just a kid, and shush, go in the corner there. And even, God forbid, some of us have been raised in the archaic surroundings of children should be seen and not heard.
Yes.
My grandfather was a big fan of that.
Yeah.
And I think what it meant was, I don't know what to do with you. I can't cope, so stop talking. Like, don't be
Yeah.
here. Um, that wasn't my problem, that was his. But, as an aside. But power, right? The power of that particular person, for example, my grandfather,
Mhm.
he was probably the strongest negative influence I've ever had, in that I learned so much from what not to
Mhm.
do. He was,
Right.
he was a fantastic example of what not to do, how not to live.
It's
Like
funny,
it's
we joke
tragic
about
that
that,
he,
right? We joke about
yeah,
that. Sometimes if nothing else, you can serve as a bad example.
right. And I learned some phenomenal lessons from
Right.
him. Now I would have preferred to have learned them in a better way, but I
Right.
think I learned them in the most powerful way.
Mm.
Right? That was the thing. That was his great power. I'm pretty damn sure he wouldn't have chosen it,
Mm.
but it was what he did. And I'm sure he had that example for more people than just me. But
Right.
yeah, there is power in everything, even if you don't know it, probably especially if you don't know it.
Yeah, and you have power. Like, and it's funny, right? People have, and even you may not realize it, people have given you power and you don't know it. That's
Right?
another big one. Like, like to go back to the example of parents, right? Even after a certain point, when you think your kids don't listen to you anymore, trust me, they've invested a certain amount of power in you that you still possess. You may not know how to use that power that they gave you, but they gave you power. This is even after they need to give you power.
Hmm. And I think kids always listen, whether or not they act on it
Mm.
is a whole other ball game, but they hear you. And they're making it mean something, and they're feeling things, so that you still have to tread carefully with that, in that it's a power, so don't hold it too tightly, where you don't let them grow and be who they are and make their own decisions, and don't hold it so loosely that they think you don't care. you know
Mm.
there is always a balance. That holding the egg gently is a pretty good example for anything in life. Honestly, you got to be careful with that thing. What's your intention with it? How do you want it to end up?
Yeah, it makes me think of that. We've spoken about this on the show before, but those videos there where the people break the egg over the kid's head and you
Oh
see how
man,
devastated the child is. But
I
that's an
hate those
example of
so
you,
much.
yes, yeah. And that's an example of you as a parent basically destroying your power that the child gave you.
Utterly. And yes, and that is an example of a parent not realizing
Mm.
how much power they have, nor do they accept it, even when told.
Mm.
So, because I've seen some of those videos and I've commented on them, and
Mm.
other people have commented on them, and we get railed at for not having a sense of humor, etc. And it's like, no, 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 you don't understand. You're traumatizing. You are not, this is not funny. Like, I
Right.
don't care what you think. The truth is, it's not funny. That child, you can see if you look at them, there's devastation in those
Yeah.
eyes. That adult who's supposed to be caring for them and keeping them safe just did something inexplicably violent to them and
Mm.
then laughed. That is going to have repercussions for life, man. That is a case of misused power on steroids. That is so bad. I can't even. Yeah.
Mm. And that's like, so that's kind of a warning of you never know what power people have given to you. So you might as well act like you have power. And take the responsibilities that come with power, because that's a big one, right? The responsibilities that come with power. Like,
It's huge. And you
I'll put it
can't
like this,
pretend it
right?
didn't happen.
Like even like right now, as of this recording, right? There's a whole for the upteenth time a debate of class in like people who are wealthy versus people who are poor. The wealthy class versus the working class, whatever. But here's the deal: when you're working class, as much like, and one of the reasons actually why there's such unrest at the moment is because we are looking at the upper class and saying, hey, you're not using your power wisely or you're not using your power responsibly. But I will put also something to consider. People who have no power don't realize how much responsibility the people with power are dealing with. And it's only when we see it being done incorrectly that we notice it. Like, what was it for politicians, right? A politician who's doing their job well, but doesn't make a big deal about it, is going to run and have a hard time of being reelected because people don't realize or I'll word it this way: people don't so politicians will sometimes complain that people don't see all the good things they do; they only see the bad things they do. So someone might pass like wherever your government is, they may pass a lot of good legislation that helps you, maybe has saved your life at one point. You don't know about it, but because they pass a bad piece of legislation, then you know about it because then you see the consequences in your own life, but you don't necessarily see the consequences of the good things because either you're so used to that, living in the country you live in or the jurisdiction you live in that you don't understand how bad things can go with a more corrupt government. So
It's
you kind
funny. You're reminding me of a conversation I had just yesterday
of,
that about politicians
mm,
and the corrupt nature of pretty much all of them because it
mm,
kind of goes with the territory. And then I was being
the
told
revelations.
Revelations, yeah. And then I was being told about um, New York was being run by the mob. I think it was like in the 40s, maybe.
Mm.
I don't remember,
Actually,
but
even earlier than that. But yeah,
earlier, okay. But when they were run by the mob in New York, it was a safe city and the streets were paved and, things were kept clean and everything worked. Why? Because the mob knew that in order to maintain their power,
mm-hmm.
they needed to deliver to the people that were there to keep them happy. So actually, they were more effective and more helpful than an elected politician would have been. So now you've got the question of, well, were they really the bad guys? And the answer is yes and no, depending, just like I've said before about Hitler, and depends on who's looking
Yes.
at that person, right? To one person who's living in the village that he came from, where he sent medical supplies, he was not a bad guy. To everybody else, pretty much, yeah, he was. Depends on the side you're on. So isn't it interesting that the mob, yeah, they probably kept control by bumping off a bunch of people and stealing money and all kinds of things. Honestly, I don't know that that's different from politicians, but they also knew that they had a responsibility that they had to maintain in order to stay where they were.
Yeah. You know,
So again, were they the bad guys or the good guys? I'm going to say yes, all of it.
yeah. I will offer this, right? So the reason that you get groups like the mafia or even like the Taliban or ISIS or the IRA, the reason they get the prominence they get is because the people who are in government who are supposed to be taking care of the people who had given them over their power is that they didn't give the services, they didn't give what was needed, so there was a vacuum. And then these groups come in, they start offering medical supplies, they start offering food, they start offering even education and stuff like that. However, the price is loyalty, right? And
Mhm.
that loyalty can come at a high price, but that's kind of what happens. It's when the system fails that all these other groups can come in and they can actually do a really good job. You just have those
Depending.
consequences that it's the price you're willing to pay for it.
Well, you mentioned Taliban, and we're going
Mm-hmm.
controversial here, so
Yes. Well,
let, let,
that's why.
let's play. Let's play. So Taliban were an antidote to Russian involvement in the area. And
Hmm.
the US and other countries did not want Russia to be taking over
Right.
Afghanistan. So the CIA and probably others
Yes.
actually trained the Taliban. They went
Hmm.
over there and trained them so that they would be a good counterfoil to Russia. Well,
Right.
the intention was questionable, wasn't it? It was a
Hmm.
subterfuge, and it was, we're going to use this group of people against that group of people for our own ends. Now, I've
Hmm.
mentioned before, your intention is really important, your motivation is important
Yes.
because it will bite you in the ass. And witness what happened with Taliban when, Russia ceased to be such a big issue for
Yes.
them. Then they turned round and literally bit the hand that trained them,
Hmm.
and continue to do so because they were never the pawn that people assumed
Right.
they were. The power of I can train these people to do my bidding was so heady that they didn't actually stop and look at what are you doing here exactly and
Hmm.
why? And, is that legit? Like, is that something you're prepared to take responsibility for? Because we're getting the consequences.
Yes. Well, I was going to say that's exactly it. It's one of the big not secrets of the late 20th and into the 21st century is the using all these terrorist groups in the Middle East to fight the Russians. Well, now that fight's over, and you didn't take responsibility for now kind of bringing them back because like a lot of that section of the world was very secular and very modern
Hmm.
until all these groups that were very religiously ingrained, but they were the ones willing to fight and take the money to do, because they knew they could grab power
Hmm.
when the fight was over.
And it was a longer game than the
Yeah.
very naive people who thought they were in control. It was a longer game than they were playing. And we see this in politics now in the US as well.
Hmm.
There are two different games being played by the two different main parties.
Hmm.
One of them has a much longer game that they've been working on since, oh, I don't know, 40s or 50s. And they're getting there. They're getting their wishes now in spades in some areas. And the other party kind of went idealistic in a way that wasn't manageable.
Right.
And they kind of lost their path. So who has the power? Well, I think we know that by now.
Yeah. Well, that's the other one. It's also a not so secret that this idea of the deep state is actually a thing, but it's meant as a protection against the Cold War. Should there be a nuclear strike and should the government be destroyed, this is a built-in government that'll take over during time of crisis. And there were people like Dick Cheney who believed those people should just be in charge all the time. And a lot of the people I'm sure, in that, deep state probably think they should be in charge all the time too. If we're going to be there good enough for the emergency times, why shouldn't we just be there all the time? But we've actually kind of discussed this idea on the show already. The people who are good for emergency times are not necessarily good for the good times.
And sometimes just because you think they are
Yeah,
biding their time doesn't mean they are.
right.
Maybe there's something happening there that nobody's looking for because they're assuming that the power they have is inviolable, that they are
Mm-hmm.
absolutely holding the power. See, that's one of the things about power is sometimes you don't know you've got it when you have, and other
Right.
times you think you've got it and you don't. You lost it and you're not aware of that yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, am I talking about every person? Not necessarily, but also not necessarily not. I mean, it's up for the individual to know. Um, where are you on that? Where do you think you have your power? Let's go for the parenting for a second, right?
Right.
Like parenting teenagers. I love teenagers as a species. I think they're a riot. They are so much fun. They are adults in training. And this is also where you get your reveal. You get to see what you've done so far because they'll reflect it at you. So the parent who says, okay, I got to control my teenager, and
Mhm.
that's it. You're at home by 9 o'clock, and you're in bed by 9:30, and no screen time for you, and you're grounded for a month, and what all else, you wield all this power. Well, gotta tell you, it's bullshit. Doesn't work, never did work, isn't gonna work. It's not power. It's just you making a lot of noise, right?
Right.
Like it's not going to have the effect that you think you want. The effect you think you want is to have your child under control. The effect you're actually having is you're causing them to find other pathways. They will climb out of the window and down the tree,
Mhm.
or they will find a way, and you've just helped them to be more sneaky and less interested in talking to you. So who has the power really? At this time, it's the teenager. Now, if you want to have power as a parent, your power is to help that teenager learn the skills of adulthood. So let them make some decisions that you don't second guess, you don't correct, you don't do anything. You leave them with it and just say, "Oh, okay, interesting. Let's see how that goes." And you offer nothing else. Let them do it. And if they ask for your advice, we'll give them options. If you do this, I see this or this. And if you do that, I see this or this. Give them pathways that you can see and let them make a decision. But your power looks different when your kids are a teenager to when they were little. Your power is not to throttle them and keep
Right.
them under control. Your power is to release that control and to give them the tools to handle it.
Yes. Or to word it for this episode, your job is to teach them to use their power. And consequently, if you teach them to use their power, they'll trust you with their power.
Exactly. It definitely it works that way. You have to shift your perception of your role in that kid's life. And as teenagers go, if you can't trust your teenager to make a decision, you have done a piss poor job.
Hmm.
And you need to do some reparations right now. You need
Yeah.
to change that narrative. Otherwise, when that kid leaves home, they are not going to talk to you anymore.
Yeah. Because I was going to say also to extend on my use of that example is that just in general, people, if you help them learn to wield their power and they trust you with their power, eventually they'll wield their power in your favor.
Sure.
So, so it's a lesson to be learned, right? I keep
And
through this whole episode, I keep thinking of just how much power is out there that you do and do not know you have, that you can and cannot share. That like the whole gambit, like even prepping for this, like I didn't really prep for the episode except for look up the definition of hard and soft power just to make sure I had it right. But
well, think of the power of a parent, right? That we were just talking about, and then put that in a broader context.
yes,
So it could be the entire family, it could be the society, it could be the culture, but there are shifts that need to happen at different stages. And using just, well, I'm the boss and because I say so
mm-hmm.
is, first of all, it's a puny tactic. It's very feeble as a tactic, and it will win in the short term just out of brute force. But it does not have longevity and it is not going to last that way. Whether you're in society, whether it's in your household, whether it's just you and your kid, like that is not the way to go. You might think that it's a simple, straightforward thing, but it's really going to have repercussions that you spend a lot of time dealing with later.
Mm-hmm.
And, it works in the broader context. So, where is society functioning in a sort of power sharing kind of way? Something that bothers me a lot in the US, and this is an
Right,
imbalance of power that's staggering to me. Like, I don't understand it at all.
mm-hmm.
Teachers.
Right,
Teachers are paid a pittance. Like, they are given negligible amounts of money. Don't care what state you're in. They're all miserable, I've
right,
looked. And they are required to buy supplies for their school kids. They have to
mm-hmm.
buy supplies for their class. I mean, that blows my mind. Then
Mine too.
they're also restricted on what they can teach. some states are worse than others. I mean, I put a parody video up about Florida recently because
Yeah.
their schools are just, it's insane what they can and can't teach. And we're rushing backwards to like before the Middle Ages. It's utterly bizarre. Now that is a misuse of power that will have untold repercussions. You have a whole generation of kids that are going to go through school not knowing some really crucial information and then expected to function in society, and their functioning level is going to be abysmal. And guess what, people? These are the ones who are going to decide which nursing home you're in. They're going to decide how the roads are paved. They're going to
Yep.
decide whether there's any medical care at all. Like, they're going to decide so many things. They have so much nascent power that by the time they get
Mm.
there, we all are in a world of trouble.
Mm.
I can't even, wow. And, one of these kids growing up in this situation is going to have access to the nuclear codes at some point if we haven't
Yep.
already let them loose. Really? This is what we're prepared to do, is it?
Well, I'll to kind of work with that idea. Think about it. I think there was two. This is a couple of years ago. So I think there's two members of Congress who are Gen Z, and both of them, when they spoke up, got smacked down.
Right.
So Gen Z's first taste of power is that no one wants them to have power, basically. And I don't mean that in the sense of, but like when they come to introduce their ideas, and ideas that these are ideas that people don't agree with. These are ideas that people espouse to agree with in the party they belong to, and they got smacked down by their party for espousing them.
And that's a misuse of power,
Yeah.
right? That's a case of I'm going to hold on tighter and tighter because I don't want to give any of it up. And that's exactly the opposite thing to do, right? It's just we so often we go for the wrong direction. You're afraid of something, so you run away from it. But actually, the trick is to turn around and run toward it, not
Yeah.
away from it.
Well,
That's
yeah. When you say that, it makes me think of you have to accept at some point you're giving up your power because you're going to hit a certain age where you don't have the same influence, or you may not be able to influence. Just like hard power disappears at some point
mm,
because you lack the inability to make that you just to generate the force for that power.
it has a
So
limited lifespan too.
right, so it is actually in your best interest to cultivate with soft power the people who will be wielding the hard power next.
Yes, exactly. And that's the whole schooling situation
Mm.
where if you want to improve things, that's where you have to start and give more to them, not take it away. But that's not what's happening. And so often we do exactly the opposite to what we need to do, running away instead of running toward. It's, people who have lots of plastic surgeries and what have you, so that they'll look younger. You're going to die the same day you were going to die before.
Mm.
It isn't going to change. People probably, if you're famous, they still know when you were born. Like, you're
Mm-hmm.
not fooling anybody by running away from a natural process. It's it's kind of exposing you to other people's power, if you will,
Yeah.
because now you've opened up a vulnerability that doesn't need
Yes.
to be there, and somebody's going to exploit it.
Mm-hmm.
So, there is a lot of power in letting go
Yes.
and
It's
in
funny
not
because
needing to control. Control is not the same as power. I want to put that out there as well. Control is not power. Sometimes your best power is to let go of control.
yeah. Well, right. Tie it back to when we talked about love spells.
Yep.
You have now lost power because now you have to spend a lot of your power maintaining the spell. It's power you can't spend on anything else. Whereas if you had just naturally let love happen, you would be getting a boost in power because the other person would lend their power to you, and vice versa, as opposed to now having to spend power on yourself and power on the other person who cannot now wield their own power.
And it's a misuse of power, or let's
Mm-hmm.
say, to give it a different word that may land better, it's
Right.
misplaced power,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're putting it in the wrong direction. It's pointless because even if in that particular case, even if it worked, you'll never know what's working. You'll never know if it's really you or if
Right.
it's what you did. So now you're in a constant state of fear, if you will, that, well, what happens if that's what it was? What happens if this isn't quote unquote real? Or, are you prepared that if you did perform that magic and if it went very well and very strongly, are you prepared for the obsession and the stalking that it could end up with? Because, just because you have this rosy image in your head, if you throw everything you've got behind that, it's likely to change. So,
Mm-hmm.
in so many cases, you can take that example and put it almost anywhere. You got to watch what you're doing there. More
Yeah.
is not necessarily better.
And something we haven't touched on yet. So, like I said, my experience has been over the years because I communicate directly with the spirits I work with. When I wanted it, even when I used to try spells, they'd be like, "We're not doing this. You don't need this spell done. We're not doing it. The consequences of this is stupid. You're not doing it." So think about the spirits you're working with that would actually allow for a love spell.
Mm, that's a really good point because you've mentioned it before, but I think
Mm-hmm.
it bears mentioning again that there's all shades of gray out
Mm-hmm.
there in the spirit world. Uh, Spirit doesn't automatically equate to good,
No.
nor does it mean that they're going to start throwing your furniture around. There's as
Yes.
much variety there as there is here.
Mm-hmm.
So, caveat emptor, beware
Yeah.
of who and what you're playing with.
Yeah.
And
Well,
again,
and this is
you've got to
right.
have purity of intention. You got to be really clear about your
Yeah.
motivation before you start.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that the dragons running the episode want us to kind of deal with, right? It's the because between me and Michaela, magic and dragons right now is a big thing.
Yep.
So, and one of the messages, yeah, you don't know, like the powers you're invoking to do certain effects, you do have to watch out for. Like, what kind of spirit would allow this effect to happen? Like a love spell in and of itself is basically selfish. And it's you saying to the world, I can't get this on my own, but not realizing why you can't get it on your own. Maybe it's because the person doesn't want to give it to you. So they've already made a decision that they don't want to give you, that
You
bonding
took
of
their
love.
free will.
Right. So now you're trying to subvert someone's free will and
Mhm.
not for a good cause. So any spirit, like one, you always have to be leery of subverting someone's free will, even if it's for a good cause.
Yes.
But to do it for not a good cause, what's actually going to enable that spell to happen? Like, what spirit are you working with?
And what are you giving it in return?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always a thing. There's always some exchange. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're working with dragons, I mean, always there's an exchange. So what are you giving? What are you offering? And
Yeah.
if you're not offering and you're not giving, then what are they taking? Because this is checks and balances, If you request something, then you better have something in exchange for that. It's just like when we're coaching,
Mm-hmm.
it's an energy exchange, money for knowledge and ability to share that in a way that you can work with it. You can get where you want to be using that person's knowledge. Well, you don't get access to their energy, their knowledge base,
Mm-hmm.
basically who they are. You don't get access to that for free and have it work well. There has to be an energy exchange. And on this
Mm-hmm.
planet, that generally means money. Sometimes it can be an exchange of some sort.
Right.
That works fine too, so long as it's perceived as more or less equal or equivalent. Then that will work. But so if you're working with something in the spirit world, well, okay, be aware it's not a free ride.
Well, that's the thing, right? I was going to say supernatural intervention comes at a cost.
Always.
And
There's nothing that's cost free. Nothing.
mhm. Well, and it's funny, right? Because the whole like when you seek therapy, right? And I've shared this story before, but like I used to work at a place that did family therapy. I did it as the IT officer and managed all the computers and stuff like that. But I would sit on the conversations. I was the only person in my department, so I sat with everybody else, right? And what I noticed all the time, and I've noticed this even like if you look in spiritual practices, but people always want to give back, especially people who are on like some kind of government assistance and the government assistance pays for the therapy. The people always want to give something. So this is actually a note like if you help someone and they want to give back to you, that's a good note that the person appreciates what you've done for them.
Well, they can receive it.
Right, because they can receive and they can give back to you. So you complete that circuit of energy exchange and all that kind of thing. But it's a good, and it shows you that the people appreciate what you've done and your work is actually, because even sometimes giving money is sometimes too impersonal because people are often removed from where their money comes from sometimes. And they don't have that same connection to the money. So they're really, to them, they're not giving you that power that money represents. So they want to give you something other than that.
Yeah, it depends on the situation, and it depends on what you're exchanging.
Mm-hmm.
Like I will have an exchange with someone, for example, if they have an ability that I don't have, and I
Mm-hmm.
have one that they don't have, then we can trade.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely straight up. That's an equivalent energy exchange. You and I
Mm-hmm.
don't change money. Neither
Right.
of us is paying the other one, but we're both engaged in what's happening here and in the conversation and in all that comes up in these conversations. And so I think my perception is this is a very equivalent
Mm-hmm.
situation. There is an equal energy exchange,
Yeah.
or I'd rather say equivalent energy exchange because it doesn't have to look
Right.
exactly the same, but it
Right.
works.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, if you give somebody free advice, for example, and they're not engaged for some reason in some way in that exchange, they're not going to get it. They're not going to hear it. They're not going to receive
Mm-hmm.
it because they don't value it. So, whatever that needs to look like, you have to have some kind of exchange and be aware of it. Um, One of the things that drives me
Mm-hmm.
nuts, it really does, are these videos you see online of somebody going to a homeless person and
Yeah.
they'll do something for them, or they feed them, or they give them clothes or something. And every single time they require of that person that they have never-ending gratitude, that they probably cry all over the place. And they're essentially exposing that person in all their weakness and vulnerability and giving them something. That's not a gift, that's not a charity, that's not a give. Actually, it's a bloody expensive transaction because that person is paying with their dignity, with their privacy. They are paying something they haven't been asked for, right? It's taken from them, they're not giving it.
Right.
That filming that's happening typically isn't something where they say, do you mind if I,
Mm-hmm.
and also it's not exactly a request if you're holding a bag of food and in one hand and a camera in the other,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, if I can film you, you can have this food. No, no, no. That is the lowest level that you can sink to, in my opinion. It's a horrible thing. The intention behind it is all wrong. The intention is to show the world how good I am. The motive is if people see how amazing I am, they'll start sponsoring me and they'll give me money to do more of this. And I'll just show their food bag or something, right? Like it'll be from this fast food chain. But they're looking at this as a transaction.
Right.
And the person involved, the pivotal person in this, the homeless person, has no say. So please, if you're listening to us, do not allow yourself to be tempted by that kind of low level, nasty, nasty transaction. It's horrible. It's not charity.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could go around and slap people upside the head that do that, I would very happily. and
Yeah.
probably with a baseball bat because they make me so freaking mad. It's a horrible thing to do to a person. If you actually want to help them, just drop a bag of food there or give them a gift card to like the nearest fast food place.
Mm.
And then you can walk away. You don't have to have any recognition
Yeah.
for this. Just leave. Be a decent human being and go.
You know what it makes me think of? This just kind of came as an aside, and probably because this is a dragon inspired episode, so energy has a lot to do with it. So, doing a proper exchange, right? Where the person who receives the aid recognizes the aid and then returns in gratitude, the energy of gratitude, because then you do get an energy exchange, which can also benefit you as the person giving the aid. But you do it often enough and you actually build up a an atmosphere, not just figuratively, but literally in the energetic sense of kindness, of helpfulness. And then other people entering that region start to feel the influence of that atmosphere that you've created as well. Whereas if you do the opposite and just make it all about transactional and like because transactions happen, that's just the way we are. We want to give when we receive, and vice versa.
They do, but ideally the other person is a willing party.
Right? Yes. And so you can just by in your own environment constantly doing these good acts, build it up so that other people come in and sense the that goodness, if you will, in your region, and that builds upon itself. So if you wanted to do something good, do your transactions with good intentions and helpful intentions because you don't need to get your exchange right away. Your transaction doesn't have to be completed right on the spot. Your transaction can be completed years down the road. It can be completed decades down the road.
And it depends too on what you perceive as your quote unquote reward.
Right.
So, for example, if you're doing something that helps a person and you see a change in their face, in their shoulders
Mm-hmm.
are straighter, they sit up
Right.
straighter, whatever, you see that response, that in itself can be enough. Sometimes you just see that, oh yeah, I helped. And the feeling of reward that you get
Mm-hmm.
is an energy exchange.
Yeah.
And we are wired for this as social
Mm-hmm.
beings. We are wired to have that be a thing. Now,
Yeah.
I've mentioned before, I think that I worked in an orphanage in Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when I got there, I found that some people who were volunteering there really thought, because they stated, that
Mm-hmm.
they were scoring brownie points for heaven. Look at me, I'm being so good. This is part of my church, and, I'm doing this ministry thing. And it's like, what the hell? No, I was there because I thought it would be fascinating. I thought that I'd be able to do something useful and that I'd like doing it. And I did. I had a blast. Now, did I require gratitude? No, because honestly, I would have felt a little awkward.
Mm-hmm.
I was coming from so much and they had nothing. So
Right.
I didn't feel that I needed that. But whenever I felt like I'd done something effective, that was a reward for me. So the energy exchange looks different depending on what each person's coming from as well. But
Yeah.
when you look at motivation, scoring brownie points for heaven is awfully transactional and
Mm-hmm.
rather cynical. And you're also using the person,
Yeah.
right? You're using these little kids in the orphanage to pad your path to heaven.
Yeah.
Like, ew, that's just nasty. Like,
Yeah.
can you be honest and just say, I enjoy it when I can do something and I see that it's effective? Would that be enough? Sometimes
Yeah.
it is.
You know, it reminds me of two things actually. The second one is not as important as the first one. The first one is,
Maybe.
well, we'll see. We'll see when I get to it. But the first one is people should get a fundamentals in the basics of magic. Because if you're trying to win heaven by going out and doing acts with the intention of getting into heaven, you're not going to get into heaven because the intention is everything. Your intention is
Mhm.
not to do good, which is the point of doing good deeds. Like, go back and read a Bible. I don't care what version it is, they all tell you, unless they've really butchered it, like, don't get anything from an American evangelical group. Just throws those ones out right away because they
Oh
believe
no, do
in
you think they
prosperity
mess
gospel,
with
and
them?
that's a load of crap. But get yourself a fairly reputable Bible, preferably if you can do Hebrew and ancient Greek and stuff like that, preferably. But it's the intention, it's your intention of what you're doing that matters. So if you're just trying to score points, you're wasting your time. You're not building your spell is not going to work
Yep,
because you're
exactly.
looking for the opposite of your intention.
And that is what it is, right? You're working a spell there. You are doing a thing in order to affect something that you can't actually, you're not making a sandwich here.
Right.
This is something that's going to occur in the spiritual realm. So
Right.
you, O
Well,
devout Christian, are
right.
now doing some magic.
And to make it very easy, think about the Egyptian method, right? So your ka, well, your heart, right? So when you're sitting there and you're being judged, your heart is weighed. All the people you helped to, because in your head you're being cynical, saying, okay, I got to do this to get my heart light. Your heart's not going to get light. You actually have to do the work that lightens your heart. And if you
Yes.
think about it that way, that's the same thing as how you get into heaven when you're looking at it from the Christian perspective. You have to lighten your heart so that you can get in.
And
It's,
it is intention, right?
yeah.
It totally is intention. It's So in the Jewish faith,
Mm-hmm.
there is a thing called tzedakah, which is charity,
Right.
literal translation. But there are rules around this, and it's very important that you follow the rules. And the rules are you do something unseen, unnoticed, that will make a difference, and you never ever talk about it to anybody
Right.
because it's not a true charity if you're looking for recognition on a thing. So if you can do something unseen, you can contribute to something in some way, then you're doing a mitzvah, you're doing a good
Mm-hmm.
deed.
Right.
And this is something it's fundamental to everybody with I think even if they're secular,
Right.
it's like it's a thing that you do. It's part of your identity. And I think this is important too.
Mm-hmm.
Is do you identify as somebody who helps others because you can? Or do you identify as somebody who helps others because look at me, I'm such a good person?
Right.
Wow, I can tell you which one I'd rather hang out with. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not the person with the damn camera in some homeless person's face. That's to me, that is very poor motivation and intention. And I wouldn't trust that person as far as I could pick them up and throw them. I think they've got some very deep flaws in their character.
Mm-hmm.
That's not okay. So how do you identify? How are you choosing to be? That's a bigger part that comes from your motivations, your intentions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you when I very first met you, Danielle, you
Mm-hmm.
said, I do this podcast because people need to hear it,
Right.
and I don't charge anything.
Yeah.
And so you devote a chunk of your
Mm-hmm.
time and of your life energy and your knowledge to doing this podcast. But you don't even know if people are listening.
Right.
Some are responding, yes, but you don't know if we have an audience of like 5 or 50 or 500.
Right.
But we do it anyway, right? And you're here doing this anyway. You have this thing set up
Yeah.
and you do the work. You put the episodes out and so on. That's part of your identity. It's how
Mm-hmm.
you show up and it's where your integrity is.
Right. True. Thank you
You're
for
not
the kind
scoring
words.
brownie points for anywhere, are you?
No, no, for sure. For sure. Well, I will say though, I mean, part of the reward, I don't know if it's directly related to doing this, but you and I both get out of it, at least at this current point, dragons to work with.
Okay, but we didn't do it to get there.
No,
So that
I didn't even know it was going to be a thing. So,
things can
yeah.
come to you as a result of something you
Hmm.
do. But again, it's the intention. If you're doing it in order to get there, that's a very different
But
thing
yes,
from if
absolutely.
they just come because the situation is correct, because your
Hmm.
heart is light, because you're doing the right things, as that's what occurs to you to
Hmm.
do, right?
Right.
I even want to go as far as to say it's purity of intention.
Mm.
And if you're not sure of your purity of intention, for anybody listening that's considering working some spells right now, If you're not sure of the purity of your intention, take a gap, take
Mhm.
a break, and just work on that for a minute and be honest with yourself. Nobody's judging you, but you need to be clear before you move forward because that will affect what you do.
It's funny, one of the first books I think I read on anything spiritual and stuff like that was one of the advices they gave you at the beginning of the book was know yourself.
Yep.
Absolutely know yourself before you do anything else in this, because any answer you get, you'll be doubtful of it. Any you might get in your own way. Like the first thing was know yourself, know your intentions.
Mhm.
So even
And,
going
and
back to
and check in, like frequently check in because those things can change. And
absolutely.
we trick ourselves into and out of things all the time. The human
Hmm.
brain is brilliant at that. And our subconscious is absolutely on point. Like it wants you to be comfortable. And if you have told yourself that doing X is going to be the best plan, then your subconscious is going to give you everything you need to validate that. So you better be operating from an honest place.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. And just to throw the tired mechanics in of it, if you're not working from your truest intention, as I like to call it, your spiritual immune system will get in the way.
Mhm.
So if you want to succeed, you have to be functioning from your purest sense. There's no other way around it.
And sometimes you want to do a thing,
Hmm.
you're pretty sure your intention's good, but somehow it's just not quite right. There's something off about that whole thing. Well, if you
Hmm.
experience that, then I'm going to invite you to take it as a sign that that's not right now.
Mm.
Maybe it's a bit later. Some other things need to happen that you may or may not be aware of. You may or may not see them. It doesn't matter. When you do something, it affects more than you can just see. And so sometimes other things have to be in place first. And then when the time is right, because everything's where it needs to be, that's when the flow will happen. That's when you can tap in and you can make it work. But if you try and push an agenda, that's going to get sticky, that's going to get spiky, and it's not going to go the way you want it to because you're not using the right timing. So that's another feature to consider. And that's a power that you cannot control. Universal timing is not yours to control.
True.
Ever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting though. Like I like this conversation so far, and the dragons are looking at me
Uh-huh. They
because they
expect
want to
something.
go now. They want to go deeper. No, what do they want to do? You know what? I'll throw this distraction in. Okay, because this is also about power. And I'll throw this distraction in, and we'll get back to where the dragons want to go. So Schrodinger's feminism. I don't know if you've ever heard the expression.
Schrodinger's feminism?
Yeah.
I have
As in,
not.
famous for Schrodinger's cat. The cat is both alive
Yep.
and dead at the same time
I'm
inside the
aware of
box,
I'm
waiting
aware
for an
of the
observer.
cat. I'm aware
Yeah.
of the cat. I'm not aware of the feminism.
So this is it's a nickname granted to a lot of times popular feminism. The popular feminism that brings you both the concept of women are constantly oppressed by evil men and are powerless to do anything because they're helpless because men are so evil. But by the same token, also state that women are far superior to men and men are completely useless at the same time. So how can you be oppressed by useless men when you're superior to them? I actually have an answer for that, but it's
I
the
do
idea
too.
that you're both victim and yet superior to your victimizer and are able to outdo them at every turn, but yet you're
I
victimized
have
by
an
them.
answer to that. The whole premise
Yeah,
from either direction is inaccurate, deeply flawed, and just not the point.
right.
Feminism is all about equity, which is not the
Mm-hmm.
same as equality. People listening, please know the difference. Equity is where each is as valuable as the other.
Right.
Nobody needs to be in charge of anybody because that's unnecessary. It's a false power and it causes all kinds of false equivalences, straw man arguments, all kinds of things that don't make sense. The one sex is not more powerful than the other.
Mm.
Each have their roles, each
Right.
have their gifts, each have their challenges, and they are equitable. So one person's contribution should not be considered less based on their assigned sex at birth. That is
Right.
simply just straight up, it is a stupid thing to do. It doesn't work. And yet, here we are, still trying to get that message across. But the words are important. Words are magic, and words are often misused. And whenever I hear someone talk about feminism and
Mm.
equality in the same sentence, I know they've lost the point. They're
Mm.
not there because it's not about equality. It cannot be. I can't grow a beard the same way you do.
Right.
You can't grow body parts that I have. I can't grow
Right.
body parts that you have. We are not the same. It cannot be equal.
Or just to throw this one in, no matter what cocktail of hormones I take to produce breast milk, it's still not going to be as good as naturally occurring breast milk. It's a
It's
thing.
just right. It's simply these things are not equal, and nor do they need to be. It's not the point. It's
Right.
people get completely derailed with this when they start saying, "How can you be equal?" And you women still want the car door to be opened, and yet you're supposed to be equal. Like, what the ever-loving are you talking about?
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with anything. This argument is
Right.
absolutely nonsense. It's
Yeah.
it's the stupidest thing, and I have to leave when people start that
Mm.
because it's like you are so far off. I don't even know if I can work on correcting it. But the one thing I will say is if I hear the word equity, we can
Mm.
have a conversation. If I hear equality, it's like, okay, I'm freaking out of here. I don't have enough lifetime for this.
Yeah. Well, the reason I think one because this was the idea of Schrodinger's feminism was the dragons kept bringing it up, and I'm like, okay, listen, I got you. Like I was, it's actually the thing that clued me into the concept of this episode. I was listening to a discussion. So it was two guys reacting to a video of two women talking about how men don't give up their seats anymore, how men don't want to risk their lives for women anymore. That kind of idea. Chivalry's dead, blah, blah, blah. The way one guy was explaining it was it's like, listen, if you're equal to me and you're as strong as I am, why am I giving my seat up to you? Like when you have power, you're expected to do things with your power. If you're strong like me, well, I'm standing up and I have that strength. So why aren't you standing up if you have that strength?
And it's not the
So,
point.
right. So so the idea was you still want benefits, but you don't want to take the responsibility. You want the strength or the power, but you don't want the responsibility that comes with the power was basically the discussion in the end, you know?
I'm gonna have to have a little conversation with the dragons because they're moving in the wrong direction with that one.
But
Gotta
it's
say
not,
it.
the idea is like, it's not, that was just for people who need that stirring up.
Okay, well, you got
To
me
get them to
stirred
think
up.
about it because you may have noticed this, right? Because you've pointed out the things of some of the covens you've been in. Some covens or some witches have been very, very, we'll say, what's the word I want for this? Have been tainted by these ideas. Witchcraft has become synonymous with the oppression of women versus the empowerment.
False equivalencies, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, among other things, we do this, and it's the lack of critical thinking
Mm-hmm.
that is being taught in schools, like it's not being taught in schools, and I
Right.
don't think it's just in the US. But we no longer have the skills of critical thinking and of
Right.
actually
Mm-hmm.
examining an idea before we open our mouths and let it out there. But that's important as well. It's part of knowing yourself and of
Mm-hmm.
knowing your intention and so on is get the story straight.
Mm-hmm.
Like equality is incorrect. It came from, I believe, the whole idea of equal pay for
Mm-hmm.
equal work.
Right.
And that is correct. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you and I were being paid for a podcast, I wouldn't expect to be paid less than
Right.
you. Why? Am I contributing less? Are my ideas less?
Mm,
No. So why would I be paid less? If we're looking at the same work,
right.
and it should be the same energy exchange. And it's a nonsense for it to be anything different. But once you've gone past that kind of equality, equal work, equal pay, equal opportunities, in
Hmm.
that if I'm capable of doing a thing, don't tell me no because I'm female. Again,
Right.
it's a nonsense. It doesn't make sense. Just like if you're capable in nursing, right?
Hmm.
There are far less men, even still, than there are women, but there are men that are nurses.
Hmm.
However, would you say, "Oh, you can't be a nurse. You're a guy. Like you can't do that."
Right.
Why? What a ridiculous thing to say. So we lose the equity in the conversation, and we replace it with a very black and white, like we're
Yeah.
dressed today, a very black and white word of equality, but it doesn't apply to everything. So again, it's knowing where you're coming from
Right.
and why. You're doing your nutrition coaching, for example,
Hmm.
and I'm doing my nutrition
Hmm.
coaching. I wouldn't expect to earn less money because I'm
Right.
female. Doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
And yet, this is still a thing out there in the big bad world.
Mm.
And then people argue, well, don't expect me to open the door for you then. Like, what?
Well,
What?
that's a good way to bring it out, because that's part of the reason, right? They want to bring it up is because to show you, like, one, how power works, what people choose to do with their power. If the answer to I want to be equal is then I'm not going to hold the door for you, that makes no sense. Like for me, I've always just held the door for everyone, so I didn't even think about it as a thing. Like I knew it was a thing that people expected that, like, if you're a man, you hold it for a woman. But I do it for everybody because it's just like, well, I'm there at the door, you're behind me. Why don't I open the door for you? Or your hands are full. Why wouldn't I open the door for you, right?
And sometimes, again, it's a question of what meaning do you assign to that?
Right.
And why do you have a problem with it? If you have a problem with it, why? What meaning have you assigned to this act that makes you want to not do it?
Hmm.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
My husband, for example,
Hmm.
always opens the door. He
Hmm.
opens every door I walk through. I don't open doors. So much so that I went out one time with my eldest son and we reached a door. I kid you not.
And
We
you went,
reached a doorway and I just stood there and looked at it. And it was like long seconds before I kind of, oh yeah, I
mm,
have to do something with this. And he
right.
clued in at the same time I did, burst out laughing and
Yeah.
said, "Wow, you really don't know what to do with opening a door, do you?" And it was the funniest thing. But he does that because it's an act of service that he likes to do. It's not
Right.
because I'm female and I expect it.
Right.
I don't expect it, but boy, I have to be very aware when he's not around. Otherwise, I don't
Well,
know how
that's
to open a
no, but
door. It's
that's
so
interesting.
funny.
Yeah. Because I've actually before, this was like maybe 20 plus years ago, I was out doing some shopping and there was this old, like, she had to be at least in her late 70s, if not her 80s. She was just a tiny thing and she had a hard time with the door. And part of my brain went, well, we keep opening doors for women. They're going to exactly what happened with you is that, get stuck when it comes to doors.
It was seconds. It
I
was it
know.
was a
But
couple of
still,
seconds.
but it's funny to illustrate the idea, right? Because it did have an effect on. But like this
I,
one was very tiny. She was like maybe 4'9", if that.
but
Like,
again, if I see a guy who's
yeah.
got his arms full, I'm going to
Mhm.
open the door.
Right.
Like, why would you not? It's another human being, and I
Well,
think
that's the thing, Like I'll put it this way, right? To me, if you're the first person to the door, open the door.
exactly,
But if you want to treat someone, because nothing says you can't freely give, right?
exactly,
No one says you can't treat anyone and give them something, do something special for them just because, you know, like
right?
that's a whole different idea. Like here, talking about doing those things is just to like just be a decent human being, right? And do. I
And
mean, even that's a
sometimes
judgment in some way, but
and sometimes it's something you can do that is like an It is an energy exchange. It's like a little, it's an active service that nobody else needs to pay attention to, but
Right.
you both know that that thing just occurred, right?
Mhm.
And it's it's a lovely thing, particularly if you're not expecting it. It's not like that has to happen.
Right.
And I have learned
Well,
to
yeah.
open doors, I can do that. But it was just so funny that I was so out of the loop.
Yeah.
I kind of stopped for a second or two and
Mhm.
had to think about it. It was hilarious. And but it's a small thing. Does that mean that I am less than? No. Does it mean that I have expectations of how I need to be treated? No. It's something that's really sweet. It's nice. I know
Yeah.
other people who buy their spouse flowers every
Mhm.
week, particularly in again in the Jewish tradition. If
Mhm.
the household keeps Shabbat, typically the husband will buy the wife flowers every week. That's a beautiful thing. Whereas it's not an equality thing. It's not it's just a beautiful thing between two people.
Mhm.
That's all. And when we equate everything we do with who's in power and who isn't, well, man, have you ever
Yeah.
lost your way? Like, holy smokes, come on, just live a life a little, would you?
And there you go. You just found the intention of the discussion on that part.
Yeah, it's like just let it go. You don't have to
Mama
be.
Dragon went. I don't know if you saw it, but Mama
Thank you,
Dragon was like,
Mama.
"Yep, that's what we were going for."
Yeah, you don't have to be in charge of everything, and it's not a power struggle. We lose, do you know how much energy we lose
Mm-hmm.
in power struggles, in stupid, wildly ineffective power
Mm-hmm.
struggles that mean
Yeah.
nothing to anything? We give away our power, which is our energy. We give it, we throw it. You flush the damn stuff down the toilet, you might as well. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Come on, people, we're being distracted here, and there's a big purpose at hand. And we're in 2025 now with this episode,
Yeah.
so look around, stop yelling about who's doing what,
Mm-hmm.
and just see what's there actually, what's happening, and what can you do? Where are you in this?
Yeah.
Don't worry about where other people's power is and what they're doing with it and who, why, what. That's a distraction, and you're wasting your time. And it doesn't matter who's male and who's female and
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff. Immaterial, distraction. Where's your energy going? Where's your intention? How are you going to navigate this? Because there's a lot to navigate, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's big power shifts happening. There's oh boy, there's changes and shifts happening everywhere. So
Yeah.
which wave are
Plus,
you riding?
because you kind of hit it on the head. The idea is that there's more than enough power out there. Like the proper use of power is that there is no power struggles. You're allowing power to go where it needs to go to do what needs to be done. There should be no struggle.
Right.
It should be allowed to flow where it needs to go to do what needs to be done if you're doing it right.
Yeah. I mean, think of any place where power is involved. And if there's a problem with who has it, then I will show you a problem with the thinking. So even if you look at politics, okay, wait a minute now. Politics. Is this all about one person keeping their job? Is it all about who's getting the money and the attention? Or is it about how we can help the people that voted us in?
Mm,
And I can tell you it's not the latter by any of them. So the whole power struggle isn't about who helps the people the most. You have to be kidding
mm,
if you actually think that. It's no, it's who's the one that gets all the goodies, who gets all the money, who gets the prize, right? That's what they care about.
mm.
They don't care about you, the person who did the voting. Come on, seriously? No. They don't.
Yeah.
Either side, any side, don't care. It's in the nature of politics that they
Mm-hmm.
don't care. It's about them and their jobs. How much do you see going on? Let's look at Canada right now with all the
Mm.
cabinet reshuffling and what have you.
Yes.
Is that for the good of the people? Really?
No.
No. And if the other guy gets in, is he going to do any better? No,
No.
he isn't. It's going to be the same shit, different day. It's going to be a different color on the door.
Mm.
It's the same thing. Why? Because they're not doing it for the right reasons. And that's pretty universal.
Hmm. No, that's not it. I got off on a tangent there.
Yeah, but it
At least
is.
it's not the time. This episode is not the time for it.
But it is a thing.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
it leads
it's a power struggle,
into the
right? Like
importance of teach. Go ahead.
what I was talking about there was when there's a power struggle, you got to look at, well, why is there a struggle? Because if everybody was in it to help the people that voted them in,
Mhm.
and like all the people in the country, they wouldn't have to struggle. They'd be working together cooperatively.
Right.
And that's
Yes,
what we
that's
need to be looking at.
yes. It would almost behoove people to watch when votes happen. Like when the Affordable Care Act came in, I watched it, and there were Republicans who voted for it.
Hmm.
It was a Republican bill, theoretically, basically Romney care, so it makes sense. And there were Democrats who didn't vote for it.
Hmm.
And it's kind of one of the important things. Like when I was younger and I was first listening to like political radio and stuff like that, someone had actually said that. Look at what people vote for. Just because they're in the party that you like does not mean they're voting in your interest. Look at what they voted for. And what was it? So when the Patriot Act was brought in, right? The news personality who said, "I'll post a list of everyone who voted for it who's a Democrat." In case
Right.
you're wondering if Democrat is the party of freedom and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to post a list of the Democrats who voted for it.
Hmm. I
And
would like them to post a list of everybody who votes for all the big things that go through and don't go through.
well, that's the thing, right? When you hear basically, right, that gets covered by people abstaining from voting.
Mm.
They don't agree with it, but they don't have the balls to vote against it.
Yeah, not voting is still a vote.
Right.
And it is literally a castrated way of saying, I don't agree.
Yeah.
I don't
Well, that's
agree,
the
but I
thing,
don't
right?
want to
Like
be held accountable.
that's exactly it, right? The people
Uh-huh.
like it to me when you look at a list and you see abstained, it's like the you wanted this to pass, so you didn't vote against it.
Right.
But you didn't want to be called out for voting for it because it goes against your image to vote
Yep.
for it.
Exactly. And they don't want to be held accountable. No, 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 I didn't vote in that. I didn't say yes or no. Well, yeah, you did.
Well, and you
People
can look at it too, right? They left it ambivalent because when the donors come around to give money, they don't want to say they voted against something either.
they're literally covering their ass.
Mhm.
And again, it's a very low life way of doing things. If I think it was it Aaron Burr who said, if you don't stand for anything,
Oh
what
yeah,
do you stand for? Or no, if you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing.
yeah. There was
Along
also
those lines,
if you don't stand for anything, you fall. If you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for everything.
something like that.
Yeah,
Any of those things actually work, right? Like
yeah.
if you don't make a stand and you don't decide who you are and you don't stick to that,
Mhm.
wow, who are you really?
Yeah.
Again, not somebody I would choose to have in my circle. I like to
Right.
know who I've got. And like politically, I have friends that are on both sides of the
Mhm.
camp. Absolutely. And I know their reasons for it. And some of them are like, really? Okay. You think that? It's interesting. But I know that they're going to stick to their guns.
Mhm.
And that's important to me is that they're not going to change because I say, "What are you nuts?" They're not going to say, "Oh, well, in that case, I actually think this other thing instead." Like, no, 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 please. Show me your real face, not the one you painted on a
Right.
plate.
Well, and think about it, right? If you see people standing up for their commitments, and then they tell you, "I'm going to back you," well, seeing as they stand for their commitments, you know that you can trust them to when they say they're going to back you, or they'll have your back.
You certainly have a better chance. But if they
Right.
change on a dime,
Mm.
oh, okay, bye.
Yeah. And it's
You
why,
can't trust them to do anything other than cover their own ass.
yeah, and it's why you'll get sometimes really smart people will be untrusted because they change when new information comes. So sometimes it's hard to realize why they're changing for A lot of people, they find it as a sign of disloyalty instead of a sign of, well, I learned something new, which changed what I thought. And therefore, it makes sense for me to change. But if people don't recognize that, then you're seen as disloyal or you're seen as not sticking to your guns.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's a world of difference between I have new information, I've changed
Yeah.
my mind. That's perfectly
Mhm.
legit. In fact, it's desirable. Please change your
Yeah.
mind when you have new information, would you? That's a sign of growth. That'd be great. But I am gonna abstain and then
Mhm.
I'll go on the winning side.
Yeah.
That's not, in the Civil War it was called a turncoat
Right.
where you had both the Confederacy
Mhm.
and the Loyalist colors, and depending on who was approaching as to which one you shot,
Yeah. Can you
right?
drop it inside out?
Uh-huh, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from. And think about it. That's all about saving your own skin. It's not about what or who you stand for. So this again goes back to intention and it reveals. You
Yeah.
said power reveals. Well, yeah, it does.
Yeah. And it's funny, because when you're not in a position of power, sometimes a lot of you is just hidden, or even you didn't see it because you didn't feel you can manifest it because you didn't have power to manifest it. And then once you're given power, you know, and it's funny because a lot of times you can see when someone is new to having power because a lot of decisions sometimes are revenge versus trying
Yeah.
to be productive.
And also that person who goes for the revenge thing, well, they took a lot of stuff personally
Mhm.
that didn't need to be taken personally. And this is another place of power, actually,
Right.
right? Like I could say stuff to you and make it sound personal, right?
Mhm.
And you still have power, you still have a choice. You can decide she's having a pissy day. Or, wow, I wonder what she heard that made her say, that led to those conclusions. You can be curious about what's there rather than receive it on first surface value and say, oh, she said I was mean and I was, I don't know, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
That's all about me. I'm gonna pay her back. That
Mhm.
was terrible. Okay, but you didn't do anything with the information. Like there was no curiosity there. Why did I say that? Or why did that person say that thing? Where are they coming from that they would say that?
Yeah.
People talk an awful lot of smack sometimes when they're in a really difficult place. So that doesn't actually mean anything about you. But if you're stuck on taking revenge for everything,
Mhm.
well, you haven't evolved very far. Frankly, go back up the tree because you shouldn't be down here yet.
Well, that's the negative part of powerlessness, right? Like when we said, we talked about the weaponization of victimization. Part of victimization, and this is going to be one of the controversial parts, is your growth gets stunted.
It totally does. Yeah. You're
And
utterly disempowered.
yeah, so like because sometimes when we talk about just because you're the victim doesn't mean you're the good person, or doesn't mean you're awesome, or doesn't mean like you have to look at it, right? Victimization comes with a certain cost. Not that you asked for the purchase, but there's a price that comes with being victimized, and that is that your growth is stunted. And you can kind of see it in people's cultures a lot of times. Not, I don't mean culture, I mean like just the way they go about life, especially in the group of the victimized group, not them as their identity, but their circumstance. And so you'll see very unsophisticated behavior when someone comes to power, but it's because they've never had the chance to develop an understanding of the nuance because they were always in that fight or flight zone, that crisis mode. So they didn't develop beyond before the crisis. So it
No,
would be like someone who's been impoverished their whole life. They might suddenly get to wealth and think, oh my God, I have to buy the most expensive champagne to celebrate. Well, no, celebrating is just basically having appreciation of the moment.
no.
But if you're in your mind, well, you're not celebrating properly if you don't have champagne or very expensive champagne. Well, that's your lack of sophistication, right? And yes, the
Mhm.
people in power who spend their money or their power on getting those items, that's also lack of sophistication on their behalf. But them, it comes from a different kind of powerlessness.
Absolutely. And you can tell when somebody's out of alignment with the power that they have when look at the chaos in their personal lives. And so you mentioned, rich and powerful people. And I'm thinking, okay, look at the movie stars, for example, if we
Yeah.
can still use that term. Look at the people who are in movies, people who are famous for absolutely no reason other than they are famous. And you look at them, how happy are they in their lives? Or are they busy yelling at people and stomping off and having tantrums and, drinking themselves into a stupor every night and waking up and taking drugs in the morning because they're so damn miserable? Why? Because they have all this power, they have all this
Mhm.
potential, and they have no idea what to do with it.
Right.
And they don't have the integrity to go out and find something to do with it. So they just kind of splash it around willy-nilly.
Mhm.
They end up with a bunch of people hanging out with them who, just like the love spell,
Right.
what are they really there for? Is it what they can get out of the deal? Are they just hanging on to your coattails so that somebody will notice them? Like what is the point there? And you gotta sort of ask, well, what did you do with your power? Where did that go? Like look at Dolly Parton. Okay,
Yeah.
she's a great example of somebody who grew up in incredible poverty, but she handled it, and she has millions, but she could have billions. It's just
Right.
she keeps spending it on giving kids books and just sort of spreading it out there in places where she
Yeah.
can see there's a need. Does she come saying, look at me, I'm such a good person?
Right.
No, she just goes and does those things. We know about it because people talk about it,
Yeah.
but she's not having cameras everywhere she
Right.
goes while she
Well,
does
yes,
this.
that's a good example, right? Because I
It
think there's
is.
also a thing too where she'll cover medical bills too for some people.
She does all
I'm not
kinds
sure.
of things that we don't know
Yeah.
about.
Well, that's the
And
thing, right?
George Michael of
Yes.
Wham,
Yeah.
he did so much good for so many people. And yet in his lifetime, he was vilified, he was called names, he was given a hard time. And yet that didn't stop him from doing all the good things that he was doing and not telling anybody. He
Mhm.
did not seek to improve his reputation by saying, yeah, but look at me, I'm a nice guy, I do these things. He didn't do that. He kept doing them silently, quietly, unseen, right?
Yeah.
That that is somebody coming from a good place.
Yeah. You also make me think of, I'm going to say this to the listeners. So you may have just noticed in this moment, we were starting off with a way of where it sounded like we were pretty much poo-pooing celebrities, only to finish up with actually celebrating those who have done something really good.
It's possible.
Yes. But I
It's
just
not.
wanted people to understand that when you're in the spiritual world, people's circumstances do not dictate their goodness.
No, it
And
reveals.
it behooves you to recognize that, just like we just did here on the show, on the
Yeah, it
episode.
reveals them. It reveals them, right? And you
Right.
can see the people who are doing quote unquote good acts, and they're doing it in order to get recognition for that, right? It's part of their brand. Let's get really,
Yeah.
sticky about it. It's part of their brand. That's not what we just discussed with Dolly and with George Michael. But
That's
so
right. It wasn't
many
their
people,
brand, it was who they were.
it's who they exactly 100% that is the point. That is a beautiful illustration, actually, of
Yes.
what we're saying here. It's so the one group have integrity, they have intention, they know what they're doing, they've got a solid foundation, and they don't need anybody's approval to tell them that they're doing a good thing. They just go do it. The other group are very insecure, shallow, and require external approval for every damn thing they do. So, my recommendation is please work on developing that character and using celebrities. I'm not dissing celebrities. You got money, good for you. That's it's wonderful, lovely. We still have the same amount of time on the planet that we had
Mhm.
before, with or without it. But it's a clear example that so many people know about. Like you look at what was the price of that money?
Mm.
And when did you sell your soul for it? And are you okay? And some people have sold their soul for it. We've got an awful lot of stuff in the news right now about P. Diddy parties, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have been damaged. And was it worth it?
Yeah. Well, even with the Me Too movement, one of my first things was some of the whistleblowers who came out. I was like, you're rich and famous now. You've been rich and famous for a while, so why have you kept feeding into the system and why are you only now speaking up? Because you had the power for a while now to do something about it. And you had technically a power to do something about it when you were there.
And you could have been a leader of
Yeah.
this movement long before it became a movement. So there's a lot of things, and it's
Right.
up to them to answer it for themselves.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good point with, people like Dolly and George who did they did their own thing. They did it for the right reasons. And they're not, let's bring cameras everywhere we go. Not the deal at all. And Dolly's just like she's just having fun, man. I love
Mm.
the way she does that. And she's doing good stuff with her means. And she's
Yeah.
also enjoying her life, which is good too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it power reveals is what you said at the beginning, and I think it's a really good point. Maybe this is a point where we even end on it, but I think power reveals is
Mm.
yeah, it
Yeah.
does. So be aware of what it might be revealing.
Yeah. I'll just for clarification for listeners, I didn't come up with that. But once I heard about it, I was like, oh my God, this is the thing. Power reveals.
It
But you know what?
does.
It's actually a good place to end this episode because I don't think I'm getting anything more. And I think we've pretty much given people enough to think about right now. And we might actually revisit this
Uh-huh. Oh, I'm sure we
further
will.
on in 2025, closer to the end of the year, because I think people are going to take the lessons from this episode and they're going to need guidance further, or at least a place to kind of rehash what they thought. So we'll go back into it. Actually, we
Yeah,
might have to bring on guests for that one, I think,
we'll find out.
to see what people, yeah. Okay, well, that's
Well,
sitting there.
I would love to
That's going
know.
to, we'll let that simmer.
I would love to know what comes up for anybody listening to this. Like, what do you agree with? What do you disagree with? And why in both cases? Because that's where dialogue happens, that's where
Hmm.
understanding can happen, and that's where assumptions can get cleared up,
Yes.
right? Because assumptions are problematic and it's something that everybody deals with at the moment, right? And it's like,
Yes.
yeah, I don't know, that's an awfully big leap.
Mhm.
So, yeah, let us know what you think.
And
Literally.
it's where power grows and gets cultivated too.
Yeah. And it really is important not to be too attached to anything.
Hmm.
I haven't mentioned Buddha yet this episode, but gotta say,
Sure.
the Buddha said, you
Yeah.
know, don't be attached to things. It doesn't mean don't enjoy anything.
Right.
It doesn't mean don't be in the physical plane. What it means is know that nothing is permanent. When it
Right.
goes, it goes. Don't try and hang on. Whether it's power, people, situations, whatever it is, it's there for as long as it's there, and then it's gone. And
Right.
that's the nature of life.
Mm.
And that's power too.
Yeah. So you might want to guess what your assignment is for this episode. Find where your power lies, where your power is, where you're giving it away, where you're accepting it from other people, and look for the power you don't think you have, power that other people may have given you. Because
Bring
like you
it
said
to
with the
yourself.
example, right, with the child getting the egg cracked open on her head, and many other instances of that kind of stuff. Someone has given you power, and you may not know what you're doing with it. So it's a responsibility to try to understand where your power lies.
It is. Mm.
That's going to be where your assignment goes. Check your power.
Boom. Mic
Yeah,
drop.
that's two in a row.
Yep. Good one.
So, all right. So once again, I'm Daniel Dubois.
And I'm Michaela Gaffinstone.
Until next time.
Until next time.